want to talk about Jalen Brunson getting paid?
Well, I mean, he's going to get paid. The question is how much.
Shout out to JB for
is
that.
He going to get
you,
paid? Because, look, this is the biggest story for this Mavericks team this offseason is bringing back Jalen Brunson into the fold, and the question being, how much are you going to have to pay in order to get Jalen Brunson?
What do you mean how much? I thought we all decided that the number was probably going to be somewhere between like 20, 22, and 25 million a year. I thought we all decided. I thought we all knew. And then, Mark Cuban said, I'll pay that, and that this is a done deal. What are you talking to me about this for?
Well, Adrian Wojnarowski, super NBA insider for ESPN, he put out a very interesting article today. A lot of it having to do with Kyrie Irving and his situation with Brooklyn, which we'll get into throughout the course of this show as well, because the way things are going down in Brooklyn, there could be some real reverberation around the league that could set off a lot of different things in motion for several teams across the association. But this particular portion of his article struck me. Quote, as possible destinations go, the New York Knicks are working to clear salary cap space, preparing to recruit Dallas Mavericks free agent guard Jalen Brunson, sources say. Okay, no harm, no foul. We knew about that.
I mean, he went and hired his pops. Not saying his pops doesn't deserve a job, right? But it did feel like they were trying to set themselves up for it. Yeah.
He wanted, talking about Brunson here, he wanted a 4-year, $55 million extension last offseason, but the Mavericks never made an offer, sources tell Adrian Wojnarowski.
Which we also knew to this point, right? We all understood that was something they probably should have done, but they weren't completely sold, and then he sold them this year, right?
Which is interesting because that was the same contract that Dorian Finney-Smith signed when he signed his extension.
But that was during the season. Once he got into the season, it became very abundant that, Jalen Brunson's probably going to need more than that.
Woj goes on to say, because of the risk of losing Brunson for nothing to the Knicks, where his former agent, Leon Rose, is the president of basketball operations, and his father, of course, Rick Brunson, is a newly hired assistant coach there, it could take, quote, nearly a max contract for the Mavericks to keep Jalen Brunson.
A whomst?
Now, okay.
A what?
A near max contract. Now, if you know,
what's his max? I don't understand what you're talking about.
The max contract.
That's 25 then? Is that the max of the window we were talking about?
A little higher, Steve. A little higher there, Steve Harvey. A little higher there. The max that Jalen Brunson could get this offseason, Larry, you ready for this number? 5 years.
Sure, we've talked about this.
At $175 million. That's the max that he could get from the Dallas Mavericks. Now, if he were to sign somewhere else, the max he could get from another team, he could get a 4-year, $130 million deal from a team somewhere else. Because remember, the Mavericks have Jalen Brunson's bird rights, which means they can offer more years and more money to stay with the Mavericks. The most he can get on the open market, 4 years, $130 million. So we're talking about possibly, if he signs a max deal here or somewhere else, anywhere between $130 and $175 million, which is
35 average annual value, $35 million.
Yeah.
And somebody earlier today texted me like, yo, they saying Jalen Brunson can get $35 million. I was like, what are you talking about? Someone misheard. It's $25 million. But no, apparently this is the reporting, and this gets quite hairy, except it also doesn't.
Right.
Because the answer to the question that you pose, which at this point is still, right, like, do you still want to sign him? The answer is, do you have a choice? Like, the answer is a question.
That's the better question.
Do you have a choice? Because the understanding is, and we've laid this out many a times right here on 105 Through the Fan, if you don't, you get nothing.
There's no salary cap relief.
No.
There's no extra benefits.
Nope.
Nothing.
You don't get no exceptions. Ain't no cap space that you get. You get the pleasure of watching him walk to another team and go do that there. So, like, the idea being, especially with having the owner who's already come out and said, I will pay the tax. Just put the check in front of me. I will sign it. Let's get that done. So from that place, I understand it. One of the reasons why, and I've talked with, other people about, that have asked, well, why do you do this? Why do you sign Jalen Brunson? Is like, okay, even if you are not sold on him, and this was when we were still talking in the 20 to 25 range. I was like, even if it goes up to 25 and you're like, ooh, that makes this, that makes me tug at my collar a little bit. The understanding was, that's still a tradable contract because it's a player that people want at a number that's not too hinky. You know what I mean? 35 is a number that is.
Now we're starting to talk about something
hinky,
completely different.
I never thought I'd say the word hinky on air twice in a row, but here we are. But yes, that's a place that you're just like, oh, is that now a desirable contract for what Jalen Brunson is? $35 million.
Now, here's something that we do have to keep in context with respect to these contract numbers when it comes to, what you'll see from players in terms of max salaries. The NBA's television deal is going to be coming up here in the next couple of years. Right now, that television deal is around $24 billion. They're expecting, quote unquote, to see that go up to around $70 billion in a couple of years. So with that being said, if you're willing to bite the bullet for the next couple of years, knowing that the salary caps are going to explode and the amount of money that's going to be coming in from these television deals are worth the wait, then maybe $35 million isn't necessarily as bad as it sounds now, given the salary cap constraints that you're going to be under and already under, knowing that you're paying luxury tax and then going into next year and beyond. Because regardless if they sign him or not, this team is going to be hard capped and the team is going to be strapped for cash over the next couple of years to try and build around Luka Doncic. So, as you mentioned, the better question may be, do you have a choice? Now, people will say, well, hey, Kevin, why don't you sign and trade Jalen Brunson? Let me tell you something. They want to keep Jalen Brunson. They want him part of the Mavericks' future going forward here with Luka Doncic. He's not going anywhere, at least in the immediate, if you feel like he can be part of your championship roster. And that's what the Mavericks, I believe, feel that he can be going forward for them.
Yeah, that's the second part of it. And you laid it out beautifully there, KG, is that this is a roster that went to the Western Conference Finals. So some of this question comes back to the idea of if you think this is a well-built team that is a contender in the West, or if you thought that playoff run was some level of fluke. And I think that most people watching, and maybe I shouldn't put a number or like a some level of measurement or quantity on this, but it felt to me that a lot of people looking at that felt, oh, this team is better than anticipated, or at least Luka Doncic is good enough to make this work in a particular way. If you think that was some level of fluke, then maybe you go, I don't know if we want to keep this thing together. But if you feel like that was some level of contender and that you want to stay in that realm, part of this is keeping that guy that was part of making that happen. I mean, heck, you didn't have Luka Doncic for your first 3 games in the playoffs and remain competitive in large part because you had Jalen Brunson there. So letting him walk would be problematic. Something interesting that came in on the text line, 214, y'all said the same thing about THJ and look at us. Look at us in what way, right? I don't understand what it is exactly that you're trying to say there because Tim Hardaway Jr. got injured. I don't know that that's...
And plus, his contract is really good.
Right. I was like, I don't know that that's something that you feel bad about. I think a lot of people particularly the Mavs right now, actually feel quite good about that. That's a guy that you're bringing back to your offense that will add scoring.
And is on a descending contract that is very movable.
And then there's that, right? And if you did not want to bring him back, if you feel like your team was solid and you were looking for some level of relief, that's the type of player that maybe you can move as well. As KG just said, that's a more desirable contract as well.